Great. Well, let's jump right in. We have a limited amount of time, and so I've asked each of the panelists to present their innovations, their technologies. You can read their bios, of course, in the program. This is my friend Chris Wright, Francis Barram, Simon Irish, and Kirk Sorensen. So why don't we go start here? Chris, you have 3 minutes, and I'm going to keep you to 3 minutes. Please.
All right. I'm the founder and CEO of Flibe Energy. We frack about 20% of the wells drilled in the US and Canada today, and we named the company Flibe Energy for a reason. The rise of bottom-up social organization, human liberty, and the arrival of hydrocarbons, those two factors together enabled the modern world. The impact of that is a doubling of human life expectancy in just a few generations. One of them alone was not enough to achieve that. Both of those together brought nourishment, health, and opportunity to billions that have transformed the world. I don't think it's a coincidence that the birthplace of modern human liberty, think the glorious times in the Dutch Golden Age, sorry about that, in the early 1600s, the Glorious Revolution in England in the late 1600s, I don't think it's a coincidence that both of those countries, they were the first two adopters before those social breakthroughs of hydrocarbons at scale. I think in a sense, hydrocarbons are liberating. I've been lucky, and I've been part of the shale revolution for 25 years since it first began. Maybe involved in a little bit of a blind squirrel finds nuts story, but the impact, the transformation shale has had in global energy markets is hard to overstate. The US went from the largest importer of oil in the world to a net exporter today. Natural gas, it's even more dramatic. We went from the largest importer of natural gas to today the largest exporter of natural gas. And we do that today with 10% of the drilling rigs we used 15 years ago when we were a huge importer. The shale revolution is a story of efficiency, smaller amount of land, rigs, and wells to produce more energy. And more energy matters. It matters because lower cost energy betters human lives. It changes the possibilities for humans. And I'll end with a closing thought. I think people often misunderstand energy as a sector of the economy. Energy is not a sector. Energy is the sector of the economy that enables everything else.
Great, thank you, Chris. Francis Barram, please.
Well, it's an honor to share with you the Opus cactus story.
Can you bring his audio up, please? Francis's audio.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, yep.
There we go.
So it's an honor to share with you the Opus cactus innovation story. And to me, it's actually nearly a metaphor for ARC's mission. Opus takes semi-arid land, which is typically desolate, barren, and very unproductive compared to arable land. And we have a vision for that land, which connects to this, one of the speakers this morning talking about faith. We have a vision for this land that is highly abundant and highly flourishing in life. After 2 years of us planting a spineless cactus plant on these properties, the land turns from this barren landscape into this flourishing landscape. After 2 years, we can harvest 300 tons per hectare annually of spineless cactus. The cactus is actually made up of a series of leaves and pads. These leaves and pads are harvested and are actually fed to cattle. 1.3 tons of dried weight cactus is equivalent to 1 ton of maize, but we can do it at 80% cheaper than the maize price. Collecting the other pads and leaves from the same plantation, we then feed that into a digester, and along with the waste from the cattle, produce biogas. Biogas can replace natural gas, LNG, LPG, propane, and with a technology called gas to liquids, GTL, we can convert it to biodiesel and refine it further to biokerosene for aviation. There's 39 million square kilometres of arid land, semi-arid land in the world. If we took 18% of this semi-arid land with the Opus innovation, we could replace all global natural gas, all diesel for trucking, ships and rail, and all 100% of aviation fuel. 100% sustainably, today, nothing needs to be invented, and it's, apart from the Henry Hub price, all other prices are competitive. As was shared, the Henry Hub price is super low in terms of natural gas, but that doesn't exist in Europe, doesn't exist in Australia, doesn't exist in Africa. One of our innovations has been to bring in regenerative agriculture, which makes a full closed cycle on the farm. So there is a zero waste design. The approach to looking at farms was essentially a key innovation. We rethought about how to create biomass and biogas. And this resulted in a concept called service packs. So we have a standard 1,000 hectare biomass module. 4 of those modules together make a hub. That hub becomes our standard replicating, scalable gas solution. 10 of those hubs can create 1 gigawatt of peaking power. 200 of those hubs can replace South Africa's total gas supply from Mozambique. 1,500 of those hubs can make Australia self-sufficient in natural gas. 4,000 of those hubs can replace all shipping fuels in the world. So when we look at the scaling of this solution, we started with a 1,000 hectare property in South Africa. This year we'll be completing to 200 hectares. Next year we can harvest 10 million calodes, and we're starting into Texas, Italy and Australia. So I'd hope to see that with our Opus solution, we can create a flourishing world for everyone, and where energy is abundant and is affordable.
Great, thank you, Francis. Simon Irish, 3 minutes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. So nuclear energy is infinite, it's abundant, it's energy for humanity forevermore. It's God-given. The problem with nuclear energy today is man-made. It's the technology that we have used for the last 65 years, which is an artifact of a military project just after the Second World War. The problem is an economic one. Nuclear technology today is too expensive to deploy without massive amounts of government intervention and government sponsorship. At Terrestrial Energy, and we're not unique with respect to seeking to solve this problem, we are designing a nuclear power plant that uses a very different technology. This technology is 50 years old. From a technology perspective, there's nothing new here. What is new is a company that is intending to commercialize this, and this is what we're doing. So we're using a molten salt reactor technology. Our technology is called the integral molten salt reactor, and it has 3 operating characteristics that are so important to solve the problem. The first one is high temperature operation. The second one is low pressure operation, and the third one is a high degree of inherent and passive safety. And that has 2 very important commercial consequences. Firstly, when you're looking to generate electric power and you have high temperature nuclear heat supply, you can do it far more efficiently. In our case, our efficiency is 50% greater than a conventional nuclear power plant, and it almost matches the efficiency of a coal plant, and that's what we're seeking to displace. The other virtue is that with high temperature nuclear energy supply, you can do something that is very important and for the first time. You have an energy stream that is potentially able to displace fossil fuel combustion in the industrial sector, and is a clean energy and reliable substitute for industrial processes that make the many materials of a modern world. This is extremely consequential for environmentalists who are seeking net zero, because it's the industrial sector that is proving to be the very tough nut to crack. We've achieved a major milestone with our project very recently. We've been developing this technology for 10 years. We asked the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission to undertake a systematic review of this technology against Canadian nuclear safety codes and standards They've concluded after that 5-year review, they concluded earlier in the year, there are no fundamental barriers to licensing this technology for commercial use. This is really important because this technology, while having great potential, has never been taken through the regulatory process. Terrestrial Energy is the first company to do so. So this is an industry first. This is the green light for us now to reach out to our market, to reach out to Fortune 500 companies, big industrials, that are seeking energy solutions, reliable, secure, clean energy solutions for their industrial processes, their energy-hungry industrial processes. We're working with them. We're working with them on programs to deploy the first of our plants in the early 30s, anticipating fleet deployment by the end of the 30s. So it's a very exciting moment for us. And Robert, I should pass it back to you at this point.
Great, thank you, Simon. Last but not least, Kirk Sorensen, please. Kirk, 3 minutes.
Thank you. Clean, reliable energy is at the heart of economic growth, and fossil fuels have powered the ascent of civilization for centuries. But a replacement energy source is needed, and we believe it to be nuclear energy, but not as you've known it up to this point. Today's approach to nuclear energy uses mined uranium as its fuel and pressurized water as its coolant. Thermal power is converted to electricity by giant steam turbines. Condensing that steam requires access to a lot of cooling water and limits where we can build nuclear power plants. Today's nuclear has terrible fuel efficiency. Only about 0.5% of the energy content of the mined uranium is extracted as useful energy. And what remains ends up as nuclear waste that has been the potent focus of political opposition. These disadvantages have soured the public on the potential of nuclear as a solution to future energy needs. We believe there is a better story. Reactors don't have to use so much water. They can be more efficient, and they can eliminate nuclear waste production. The solution is the liquid-fluoride thorium reactor that we're developing at Flibe Energy. It's based on thorium, the world's greatest source of stored energy, 3 times more abundant than uranium and present everywhere in the world. Our reactor uses thorium so efficiently that it can power human industrial civilization for millions of years. The salt we use is a mixture of lithium and beryllium fluorides called Flibe, and that's where our company gets its funny name. Flibe salt is superior to water as a nuclear coolant in every respect, operating at high temperature yet at low pressure, impervious to radiation damage, and storing more heat in its volume than water. Flibe is perfectly suited to drive advanced gas turbines based on carbon dioxide instead of steam to generate power. At Oak Ridge National Laboratory in the 1960s, they built a small experimental nuclear reactor based on Flibe salt. Meltdowns and other potential accidents were eliminated by design. No emergency response was required because the reactor would drain itself into a passively cooled configuration. Our modern designs couple Oak Ridge technology with carbon dioxide gas turbines to create safe, compact, affordable systems that use little to no water, which means they can be built just about everywhere. Our designs also produce materials that can generate remote power, image the internals of the human body, and fight cancer. Variant designs can also permanently destroy existing nuclear waste, generating billions of dollars worth of electricity while reducing the costly burden of nuclear waste liabilities on governments. They can also generate new fuel to start more thorium reactors. We are working to deploy small modular thorium reactors with electric cooperatives and rural communities across the United States. From there, we plan to power global shipping, an area where a single ship makes as much pollution as millions of cars. Then we will replace shuttered coal and nuclear plants, repowering communities often devastated economically by their loss, while taking advantage of existing power transmission infrastructure. We believe that the result of our efforts will be reliable, affordable, sustainable energy for the whole world.
Good. Great. Right. Thank you, gentlemen. So let me come back to the 2 nuclear panelists. I'm adamantly pro-nuclear. In my view, if you're anti-carbon dioxide and anti-nuclear, you are pro-blackout. Well, I'm anti-blackout. So, but you face regulatory issues, right? So let me ask each of you to answer this question. Where are the regulatory regimes that's not in the United States, I know for a fact, which regulatory regimes around the world are going to be most favorable to your specific reactor designs? Simon, go ahead.
In our case, we chose the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission because we are an entrepreneurial industrial company. We're looking to innovate, and what's important to us is the ability to to have a regulatory process that's sufficiently clear in cost and time to support the capital formation that's necessary for us to develop our project. So that's why we chose the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission.
Sure. So Canada, you think right now, for globally, is providing the best pathway to regulatory approval. What about you, Kirk?
I don't think I chose a regulatory approval system. My country chose me. So I'm American, so that's where I'm going to do it. And there are multiple pathways, though, to regulatory acceptance in the United States. One of them, of course, is a Nuclear Regulatory Commission, but there is a military pathway that has existed from the dawn of the nuclear era. It was written into the Atomic Energy Act of 1946. You could make the argument that the Army Corps of Engineers was the original nuclear regulator. So we are looking forward to working both with civilian as well as with Department of Defense opportunities to pursue nuclear regulation.
Gotcha. Just a quick aside, so there is one design, Simon or Kirk, correct me, NuScale Power had its reactor design approved by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in the US. It took them 6 years and $500 million. So these are the kind of regulatory issues that are facing the nuclear sector broadly. Francis, I'm pro-photosynthesis, pro-cactus, pro-plants, but how do you scale it? It seems to me that's always the issue, right? With any new technology, the design on the lab bench, the design on small scale projects, it works great. But you're talking some big numbers about covering massive amounts of land. Is that your biggest hurdle? What do you see as the biggest hurdle in making your business work at scale?
So 100%, the biggest challenge is what we call the source farm. So each 1,000 hectare hub needs about 20 million pads. The pads we feed to the cattle, the same pad gets put into the ground. We need 20 million of those per 1,000 hectares. So we need source farms to provide those, and source farms, the one we're doing now, it's been a 7-year journey to get to a source farm that can do 2,000 hectares a year. So in the models I've done to do, say, these 1,500 properties in Australia, the hubs in Australia, it would take 15 years. It's not something, it's nature. So we've got to work with nature. It's a highly abundant plant, but there's big numbers, 80 million pads per hub. So essentially it's a journey working with nature, but it's possible by scaling the source farms, but it takes time.
But isn't that also the scale problem of a fairly low energy density product, right? The cactus itself, which doesn't have high calorific value, but has some, but you've got to move tons of it to make a difference, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So Chris, the hydraulic fracturing sector faces no shortage of challenges. It's banned here in the UK. Liz Truss, when she came in and I guess was in office for about, 2 cups of coffee, and then she relaxed or said she was going to relax the ban on fracking, and then Rishi Sunak, go figure, said, no, I'm in favor of the fracking ban. How do you get more regulatory you have it in the US, although there's resistance there too. How do countries in Europe follow the US in shale revolution? There's no shortage of good shale, and George Yates from Hayco Energy knows this very well. How do you get fracking started in the UK and Europe?
Well, I tried 10 years ago. I mean, the case is simply compelling for the transformation it would be in the United Kingdom. The birthplace of the Industrial Revolution began because there was low-cost, advantage cost energy, entrepreneurial spirit, and secure property rights. And today, essentially all 3 of those are gone if you want to extract resources in the United Kingdom. So I think only crisis will change people's view on energy. I was in Washington recently, and there's all sorts of impediments building in the United States to make it harder to produce oil and gas. Why? Because it's politically popular. Getting rid of this thing doesn't magically make a replacement arrive. It's just sort of foolish policy. My message was everything you're doing when you incrementally reduce the supply of something and do nothing to change the demand, the only guaranteed impact is you raise the price and threaten the security. Make my company the most profitable we've ever been. Our industry is at record profitability. But yet we're driving up prices, we're chilling investment into energy insecure places. Like, it's a lose for everyone, and it will do nothing to change the world's dependence on hydrocarbons. Nothing.
Good. So before I came on stage, Jared Holland said, just one of the last things he said, you got to keep it short, we got to stay on time, we have less than a minute left. So gentlemen, I'm going to have to press you here and give me your best case scenario on, now, Chris, your technology is mature and you are in the market now and you're making record profits, right? In part because of these regulations. each of you, tell me, blue sky it for me. How soon could you have, I don't know, say the nuclear gentleman, a gigawatt, 1,000 megawatts of new capacity? How soon could you have it online? If in a blue sky, everything goes perfectly for you, how soon, Kirk?
It's all funding constrained. I'd say probably the mid 2030s.
The mid 2030s, so a decade or more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Simon?
With a motivated industrial partner, we could get a plant up and running in the early 30s, in the United States or Canada.
In the early 2030s.
In the early 2030s.
But you're seeking regulatory approval in Canada and the U.S. at the same time, right?
Yes, we'll be doing it.
So you think the Canadian
We're
approval?
pursuing both markets.
You think the Canadian approval will help you in the U.S.?
It will assist, but indirectly, not directly.
Okay, so a gigawatt by 2030.
32.
32. Okay. Francis, when will we see your first farm up and running at scale?
Well, we could do a gigawatt in 7 years.
7 years.
Yep.
Okay. Chris, your business is up and going. How do you scale it now, or how do you increase productivity? What's the key to unlocking more shale, oil and gas from each well? What is there? Is there one? We talked about sand impact. What is there? More sand equals more oil and gas production down the well? Give me one secret.
Yeah, it's efficiency of delivering sand and water at high pressure underground. It's also efficiency of finding ways to recover a greater percent of the oil. That's going to be mixing some kind of gas with what we inject. Could be CO2, could be ethane for enhanced recovery to get even more and more out of oil, gas, and shale.
But a follow-up question. So you were a few years ago, you're pushing 1,000 pounds of sand per foot of lateral horizontal segment in wells. Now you're doing 4,000 pounds per foot of lateral segment in wells?
Yeah, with same amount of people in the same time. The last 10 years since we started Liberty Energy, today, the wells that we frack and deliver are half the cost and twice the productivity. And real quick about fracking, it's been at scale really for 15 years. 50% of US primary energy, 50% comes from fracked wells. 70% comes from oil and gas, but the vast majority of that comes from fracked wells. Our market share of US energy consumption from oil and gas is at all-time highs.
Great. That's a good place to stop. Ladies and gentlemen, help me thank Chris Wright, Francis Barram, Simon Iris, Kirk Sorensen. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you all.